I'm Rob Downey, a family practice MD and Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner. I'm coming to you from Seaworthy Functional Medicine in Homer, Alaska. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. Hey everyone, I want to take a minute to thank Magic Mind, our sponsor for today's Seaworthy podcast. And these folks have a really cool product, a productivity shot. So why would you be interested in this? If you're wired and tired, you feel over revved, and you're having difficulty with energy and concentrating, this is a cocktail, very thoughtfully put together over many years, that you can have in the morning with or without your caffeinated beverage. And the result is a flow state, meaning you're flowing through your activities and responsibilities easily with both a sense of peace of mind and that cognitive brightness and sharpness and alertness and getting things done quickly in sequence, all of which any of us that care about our productivity, which is really all of us. I suppose maybe there's a few folks out there that don't worry about that, but they're definitely outliers, especially in today's society. So Magic Mind's a cool product. It's really thoughtfully put together. It contains many ingredients that have been my friends in my functional medicine practice for 16 years. That's how I got to know this company. They saw the podcast, thought I would be potentially a good choice for a sponsor, which I am, because these are all my old friends in one place. So if you're wired and tired, if you're interested in being sharper and brighter over the course of the day via single product, I think this is an excellent choice. And be sure to use the code FIELD20 if you want to pursue this to save up to 40% on your first order. Magic Mind's website is magicmind.co/field. Today, we are fortunate enough to be joined by my colleague and also a dear friend and functional medicine collaborator, Joe Rignola. Hey, Joe, how's it going in New York?
It's going well, Rob. Thanks so much for having me. This should be fun.
Yeah, I've been really excited about this. So Joe Rignola is an entrepreneur, filmmaker, and best-selling author. He began his own health journey about 16 years ago while dealing with depression, anxiety, severe digestive issues, weight gain, and more. After researching alternatives to the medications he was on, Joe was able to take control of his health and lose over 45 pounds by changing his diet and lifestyle. Filled with gratitude for his newfound health and energy, Joe went back to school to study health and nutrition so he could help others along their journey. He has founded, co-founded, and launched some of the most successful brands and events in the health space over the past 12 years. He is the founder of the 170,000 member community, Well Connected TV. And full transparency, Joe and I collaborate a lot. And today, as folks join us, thank you for joining us for the podcast. Also, you can expect this as more of a back and forth session. Joe and I will be talking about a masterclass we're working on together and co-hosting. And because Joe and I do work together so much, we'll be sort of teasing out hopefully the best of what each of us knows about today's topic. And the topic is getting out of your own way, which is such a great topic always, but especially now, huh, Joe?
Absolutely. It's getting out of your own way. It's kind of like getting out of my own way. Been really, as we've, we'll talk more about the masterclass, but as we're recording the interviews, been just very transparent and about my own struggles, with anxiety and stress and overwhelm and those things. So this is going to be a nice distillation of what I've been learning and what we've been learning with the masterclass so far, and I think why we think it's important to do this work right now.
Right on. Well, to not bury the lead, then we've got a Rewiring Your Brain masterclass that we're putting together. And it's autumn or winter of 2022, based on where you live in the country and what your experience is. In Homer, a quarter of the vehicles driving around town had a half a foot of snow on them.
Already.
It felt like, oh, I know what altitude they live at. So this will drop in spring of late winter, early spring of 2023. And you and I have these interviews rolling with these amazing folks. Most importantly, rewiring your brain is the title we chose together because of neuroplasticity.
Mm-hmm.
The wonderful news that the brain can heal damage to nerve cells in the brain. It can sprout new connections. It can tidy up old connections, and it can grow new neurons, all of which is stuff you and I were told in high school and college couldn't happen. And now we live in an age where we can leverage this good news via things you and I have learned and the experts we're talking to about the day-to-day real world activity of taking these altered states we can put ourselves in deliberately, meaning being positive and proactive and engaged and what have you. And these altered positive states we put ourselves into turn into altered traits in the brain via neuroplasticity and the architecture of the brain for our betterment. So let's use that as a segue then into your motivation that it was time for a masterclass around this, especially because of people dealing with anxiety or depression as a diagnosis,
right,
or people feeling the symptoms of anxiety, low mood, overwhelming worry, fatigue based in mood, their existential experience now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's a couple of main reasons why I think this is important right now. First of all, looking at the recent research, there's been an uptick of somewhere between 22 and 28% in diagnoses of anxiety, depression, and certainly we see the fear and overwhelm, in our day-to-day lives. We see it in the media. And so it's really an important time to put together an event like this to sort of help people navigate, the emotions that they're feeling. Our goal here, I think, is to really help people overcome these feelings, to sort of break through their limiting beliefs, to live a life that's, on purpose and with passion. And, I think the more people we have living in these states of abundance, of gratitude, the better off we'll all be. And the other reason is much more personal. It's because these are things that I've struggled with over the years. My sort of origin story, that you alluded to in my bio starts 15, 16 years ago, where I was on antidepressants. And, the side effects of coming off of those was the catalyst of doing some research on more natural, more alternative modalities, lifestyle medicine, and things like that to sort of overcome some of the ailments that I was experiencing. And even to this day, still struggling with anxiety and even dipping into depression at times, and understanding where that's really coming from. And that's not my it's maybe not my truth as I believed it to be over the past several years. So it's a lot to unwind there, but so like, again, part of this is a little bit selfish, right? If I'm struggling with this, I know a lot of people are. And if we can sort of tap into the networking that we have and the connections that we have in this amazing community of, functional practitioners and nutritionists and psychologists and therapists and energy workers, can we tap into this, to help people? And in the meantime, I could probably help myself a little bit too. So a little bit selfish, but not really. It's really thinking about the community that we serve, and knowing that people really do need this help. So for me, it was like those were my main two reasons, for putting, wanting to put this event together. I'm curious, what your motivation is for this event.
Thank you. Well, just hearing you talk gives me this good feeling, right, of respect for your mission and your courage and vulnerability. And I've been thinking about a book that influenced me in high school by a guy named Richard Bach. The book was called Illusions.
Mm.
And one quote I had on Instagram the other day was his quote, where the caterpillar sees the end of the world, the master sees the butterfly.
I love that.
I've been thinking about that with respect to anxiety and depression. And for today's purposes, I think we can use those words in a dual purpose fashion. They can either be a medical diagnosis or they can be symptoms, the feelings we have every day, the flatness, the worry. And so my motivation, I think, feels very sort of gritty, street level to me. And I suppose the most poignant thing to me is that in my practice, but also just my daily experience of life in the community and life in the world, the great tragedy of these diagnoses and symptoms is that they're like a pair of goggles that are stuck to the person's face that are filtering reality in a very disturbing way, which implies that the problem isn't fixable.
Yeah.
And so the inflection point for each person when they're really pinned, and for me, the related experience with these symptoms was sort of med school and residency, early 20s, mid 20s. That was the most intense trial of my life around sort of that type of thing. And then a second phase of the trajectory of family practice doctors kind of defaulting into burnout in their 40s and 50s if they're not careful. And so I've had sort of two junctures in my life personally around some of these same issues. And I just think this is the biggie, is that the folks who are suffering the anxiety and depressive symptoms themselves are telling the person, you're not going to get better. And I think that's why you and I are on a mission. It's because we need people to know there is another side of this. And I love that Richard Bach quote. It looks like the end is the beginning.
Right. That's so profound, and what a perfect sort of allegory for what so many of us are going through, right? Where it feels like, we're going through something intense and dark. And it kind of reminds me of there's another quote, I'm going to botch this, I think, but it's, when it's at your darkest, lowest stage and you realize you're just a seed that's been planted. Or something to that effect, right?
Yeah, these are beautiful encapsulations of really important timeless truths. And so as we then segue into these items that you have to share, these summary items, let's remember to ask, when you were pinned a decade and a half ago, different, because that may really help people again who are feeling pinned today. They're watching the podcast and they're thinking, that's me. So what are these guys going to do to help me? But for starters, they're going to say, like, where's my little lily pad of hope? As I'm overwhelmed. Do you remember what gave you hope? Was it kind of listening to that that inner voice? Was it somebody who was inspirational and supported you? Was it a dream? I mean, what's that narrative?
Such a great question. And this sort of points to what we were talking about with the caterpillar and the seed that's been planted. It was the darkest moment, or, one of the darkest moments for me that was the catalyst. And I alluded to it before, but I was on antidepressants when I wanted to come off, because I realized the side effects of the antidepressants, were deleterious, and not worth, the benefit I was getting. The side effects of coming off of them were even worse. Told my doctor I wanted to wean off of them. He said, just half the dose for 2 weeks, and then you can stop taking them. Well, I tried that, and the day I stopped taking them, or the day after I stopped taking them, I got these brain zaps, which felt very much like sticking your, if you ever stuck your finger in a light socket, that shock, that buzz, but it's like my brain was being stuck in a light socket, and it just radiated through my entire body, which was super scary. And but the only thing I changed was I stopped taking the medication. So did some research. This is in the earlier days of the internet, but still was able to do some research on what that was. And lo and behold, I realized I wasn't deficient in Paxil. That wasn't my problem. Like, shocker. Um, did some research on lifestyle, on diet, tested a lot of things, tried a lot of different things. Took quite a while, but finally found the lifestyle and diet and different aspects that worked for me. Lost the 45 pounds. My head felt clearer, was generally happier. It also helped that I walked away from a business that just was sort of slowly killing me from the inside out. But I lend that to lifestyle factors as well. Like, I wanted to do something that I was passionate about. And as I regained my health, went back to school for health and nutrition because I wanted to help other people. And that's sort of like led me to what we're doing now. So that's a little bit more of my origin story there. But it's hard to find that sort of hope when you're in those dark moments. And it really is helpful to have, some sort of support system. And I think as we grow and create this community, we're hopeful that creates a support system for folks who are listening. As people listen to the interviews, when we do launch the masterclass, I think with me in the interviews, I'm again being transparent as far as my own struggles. And when I pose that to the interviewer, so for example, I interviewed Dr. Tom O'Brien yesterday, who's, if you don't know, he's a brilliant functional medicine doctor. And I said, these are things that I've struggled with. And as soon as I mentioned that, he went right into problem solving mode. And so my hope is that I'm placing myself in the position of the listener, of the viewer. And by putting myself in that position, and then, giving our experts the opportunity to help me, the people listening are going to resonate with that and really have some really solid takeaways. And that's what happened. So I mentioned that in interviews, like, all right, here's what you do. Get this task, do this, do this, do this. And it's like, wow, perfect. Because again, I'm not alone here. If I'm struggling with this, and I've done a tremendous amount of work over the past decade. And so, and there are still, like I said, there are still times when I dip down into like anxiety, fear, and it doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to, but it's still there. And so, people can resonate with that and say, oh, wow, so that works for him. This is, one of the top experts in functional medicine, one of the luminaries in the space. So people can really take that and take action. And that's what really excites me about this project.
A couple of things I flashed on while you were talking are the no surprise, one of your many great traits in my eyes is your humility. And I want to flag something here, which is what I heard you say is you were disenchanted with the conventional experience. You went and found other resources. I think that there had to be I bet there was a lot of courage being manifest at that time, because it may have felt scary to depart the conventional paradigm, that you were exposed and vulnerable without medication. You might not do well. There might be catastrophic consequences. And so I think that one of my goals, and you're in my collaborative here, is for folks to know that there's a lot of complexity here. I've had good conversations with China Stein, a functional medicine psychiatrist in New York, during my Healing Habits Summit, about her expertise around people making important decisions around medication, but for today's purposes, knowing that there are non-drug solutions, and that courage is warranted to look at the functional medicine arm as opposed to the conventional medicine arm only, and the courage is rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
also, we can shorten people's path. We can make sure there's a net. We can make
Yeah.
sure there's a context to all of this, because we're talking to folks with mind-blowing capability in these domains,
Mm-hmm.
who are creative and courageous in their own right. They're also safe and wise.
Yeah.
There's sort of the whole, we're I don't know, we're creating an architecture, a framework that can be transformative.
Yeah.
So that, I just want to, anybody who's feeling that little spark of courage, like I can do this.
Yeah.
That we want to, we want to fan that into some little flames of tinder,
Yeah. Yeah.
for that, that fire you want to build. Like I can and am doing this, and I'm getting better.
Yeah. And that feeling of safety is so important. We talk more about that later too, but it is safe. This is safe, and it was a little bit more scary, 15 years ago or so, because these principles weren't quite as accepted as they are now, and the information wasn't nearly as readily available. There weren't really any summits, there weren't any master classes. Like I said, Google was in its infancy, back then. So it was certainly scarier then than it is now. And so, if people take something away from this, know that there's a lot of safety in exploring these alternatives, and plenty of information out there, which is, why we're doing what we're doing. So yeah, safety is super important. It's one of the main principles of breaking through the patterns that we're going to talk about today. Is just understanding that we're safe. Everyone sitting here, everyone listening to this right now, you're listening to this either on your phone or your computer, and you probably got a roof over your head. You've probably got, good food to eat, clean water, you're safe. And so from there, move forward. It's a great place.
Well, let's go into your action items, and as we do that, couple of editorial notes. We'll see what you think about these editorial comments as we go into specific principles you have to share. So one thing for people to know is that there's a mindfulness component here. The goal, thankfully, is not for these symptoms to go away. It's for them to soften and shrink and become manageable. And one of my big aha moments, maybe 25 years ago, I read this book about the philosophy of Buddhism called Falling Apart Without Going to Pieces. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No.
And it mentioned that part of Buddhist psychology is that things never go away. They simply get bigger or smaller. And so my struggles at that time felt like the weight of a planet on my back as I was in a dark cave.
Yeah.
And I envisioned if something as heavy as Jupiter became as small as a mote of dust. And that's how I translated this principle to my life. I felt like it's still there. But if it's not Jupiter on my back in a dark cave, if it's a mote of dust floating in a beam of sunlight, that's manageable.
Right.
And one of the key things was then that it's no longer rejecting the experience, but it's doing what John Kabat-Zinn, the founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, the first breakthrough mindfulness person in the United States, calls full catastrophe living. And so we're not talking about making these things go away with a magic wand. We're talking about them morphing in a way that's beautiful and manageable based on our engagement. This is about leaning in, not there's no magic wand we're alluding to here.
Exactly. And a couple of things I flashed on there. We all have well within our power to transmute these feelings, these emotions, right? In fact, we have to. There's no other choice, right? We can live with the weight of Jupiter, or we can transmute that into something lighter. And we not only do we have the power, we have no choice. Like, so and then the other thing is this acceptance of how things are. So it seems somewhat paradoxical to sort of accept things the way they are, but anything other than that is insanity, really. Like things are the way they are, and so accepting them, I have like the four A's that I've sort of been working with, and it's acceptance is the second one. It's like paradoxically, you accept the way things are in their present state, and from there you can move forward and start to transmute and make changes. But if you're constantly resisting the present moment, well, then that's where you are. You're stuck.
Didn't you say the other day that someone you're familiar with had defined anxiety as wanting things to be other than they are?
Yeah, I think that's, I forget where I heard that quote, but yeah, one of the definitions that I love about of anxiety is wanting the present moment to be different than what it is. Well, it's impossible, right? It's instant anxiety, instant stress, wanting this moment to be different than it is. So yeah.
Well, let's go through an order for the benefit of our audience. So what's the first A, Joe?
Sure. The first one is awareness. And so if you're someone who struggles with anxiety, particularly if you're struggling with fatigue or negative self-talk or limiting beliefs, you have to sort of have this awareness that that perhaps those aren't your thoughts, that perhaps this is something that was a learned behavior or a learned emotion that stemmed from an event, or it could even be like a well-meaning caregiver, a parent or a teacher who was, looking out for your best interests, but wanted to keep you safe. And so kind of forced you into thinking too safely, right? Not take chances, quell your expectations in a way that really sort of dampened your flame, to put it that way. And so, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. It may stem from something that happened to you. And this could be a trauma too. And this could be a significant trauma like loss or abuse, or it could be, what we call small t trauma, which could be I tripped on the sidewalk in front of my classmates in 8th grade and got laughed at. It's that is still significant when you're in 8th grade. As adults, I could look at, back at things that happened to me in 4th, 5th grade or so and laugh it off as an adult. But I wasn't an adult then. And so I didn't have the capacity to process that event, even if it was mild, even, getting picked last for kickball in gym class, seems minor as an adult. But when you're 10 or 12, it's significant.
Yeah.
So we need to honor that. And we need to bring that level of awareness to that. And from there, it's a little bit easier to have some self-compassion.
Yeah.
And that's, so when something happens to you when you're 6 or 10 or 8, and it's not processed because you were 8 and didn't possess the capacity to process the event, that child is still inside of us making decisions. So we could be 30, 40, 50 years old and making decisions based on the experience of the 6-year-old that something happened to.
And some people bounce off this concept, and I want to share something that experts have illuminated. My big aha moment on this in my own journey of growth and my patients and people I know and care about. The part many of us don't understand is that all of these experiences we have a legitimate origin. Anxiety has a legitimate origin in our safety. So a zebra needs to be edgy about that grass that's rustling to know if there's a lion there. That's the legitimate genesis of anxiety. We don't want our anxiety to be the CEO of our life, but it's got a legitimate origin. And the legitimate origin, to my understanding of why young people attribute the problem to themselves when they're stressed, is because in the setting of nurture, if your parents or your community or your tribe, if there's discord as a kid, you have to lean in and connect and make the assumption as a kid, if you're not getting what you need, it's your fault. That's just a survival mechanism.
Sure.
But the extent to which that contaminates our hard drive for how we navigate and make decisions day to day for the rest of our lives is insidious and troubling, because it poisons so many cornerstones of our well-being, of self-esteem and peace and ease and safety and belonging and security. And so for anybody that feels like, well, that's not me, the data is showing this is most of us.
This is pretty much all of us. I think if you're human, you've got trauma. Like if you're human, something happened to you, you know. I don't know that there's a person on this planet that hasn't had some sort of experience that shaped the way they think, that it didn't create some sort of neural connection in their brain that affects the way they think 30, 40, 50 years after the event happened. And it was interesting. I flashed on something. You mentioned the word nurture. And it flashed on me, it's almost startling, the similarity between neural and nurture. And so let's ask ourselves, what are we nurturing in our thoughts that's creating the neural connections? And so if an event happens that scared us when we were 15 years old, uh, are we obsessing over that, or is it just, and in obsessing over that, is it creating this neural connection? That's really hard to break. It takes a lot of time and practice to create these new neural pathways, which is, again, leads us to why we're doing the event that we're doing. But yeah, I think it's what you nurture is what neural pathways grow. It's probably a more eloquent way to say that, but
yeah, let's put a pin in that. Maybe tie it into the master class. Nurture.
Yeah.
Any you are sure. Nurture.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. So yeah, again, just once you have this awareness, it's a little bit easier to shift and have this understanding that you're safe.
Great.
So that brings us to the second one, which we talked about a little bit before, which is accepting. So accepting certainly what happened, accepting yourself as you are in this moment, full acceptance. And when you can do that, it lends itself to self-care, self-love, self-compassion. From there, you can start to heal. If you're not accepting yourself as you are, you can't heal. You're fighting against those. You're not, you can't move forward. And this is, we still have thoughts of self-sabotage. We have thoughts that aren't true. Like any thought that's, says you're not worthy or that you're not capable isn't true. It's not true. So self-love, self-compassion is a place to move forward from. That's sort of the baseline of a place where to move forward from. Realizing you're safe allows us to take more chances. As I invite people to come on the masterclass and do these interviews, there's a fear and anxiety are in that. It's excitement too, but it's certainly wrapped up in some apprehensions, like who am I, like imposter syndrome, who am I to talk about this, who am I to ask this person to speak on this? And then I realized I'm here in my office, I'm perfectly safe, got water, I've got food, I'm perfectly safe. And I'm not doing anything, this isn't hard, right? I'm sending an email, I'm inviting people to come onto this so we can help hundreds of thousands of people. And so there's nothing unsafe about that. And so if I can remind myself of that, and that's the place to move forward. And there's a quote, again, I'm not sure if I came up with it or it was a dream or it was a conversation, but fear is mainly subconscious. So these neural pathways that are formed, and especially when we're talking about the amygdala and the lower brain and the monkey mind and things like that. So fear is mainly subconscious, but trusting yourself is a choice. We can make the decision that we're going to trust ourselves. And again, it starts with accepting ourselves the way we are, and then realizing we're safe, and then trusting ourselves and moving forward from there.
I love that. I want our participants to hear an action aspect to this and sort of flag it, folks that are really interested in this.
Yeah.
So one of the motifs of this class and one of the motifs of all of the mastery level experts commenting is that we put ourselves in the state of who we desire to be, and our brain follows, our brain architecture follows. And then it potentiates the capacity to enter that state more easily. And so the most disparaging phrase for this is fake it till you make it. But there's actually a truth in this which is that we enter the desired state as a deliberate act or an approximation of that, or a little sketch. If we were an artist, we create a sketch of that. We enter that state deliberately, and our brain follows, and then our brain potentiates re-entry to that state.
Right.
And that's the part that's not intuitive for folks who are stuck. They feel like when somebody breaks the glass and hits the alarm and pulls the magic wand out of the emergency box and makes this debilitating symptom complex go away, I will get better.
Right. It's the other way around.
The experience is people choose to envision and actuate and act on what they want to be.
Yeah.
And then good things happen. And that's, again, that sort of courage and counterintuitive part, like go ahead and be and feel and act who you want to be, and your brain will change over time into that.
Exactly. And it's the only way the brain changes, really. And that's number 3 on my list of this fourfold path, to take the title of a book that I started working on, The Fourfold Path of Getting Shit Done, which is this guide to break through fear and self-sabotage. But the third thing on that list is action, right? The third A is action. And a lot of people, as you alluded to, they want the symptoms to go away. They want the fear to go away before they take action. If I can only get rid of this fear, then I can move forward. No, it's the other way around. You move forward and then the fear dissipates. You move forward in the face of the fear, and that's when the brain starts to rewire. That's when the neuroplasticity really takes place. You know, and the flip side of that is, if you let fear get the better of you and you cower in the corner and you stop and you let it paralyze you, fear, it's, fight, flight, freeze, right? And that's how it manifests for me. Is it usually manifests in freeze. When I get overwhelmed and anxious, stressed, it shows up as fatigue or freeze. Like I can't move. But if you can take one small action, something, just to create a little dopamine hit, something to check off the list, and move forward, just move forward, take steps forward, that's the action. And that is when the fear starts to dissipate. That's when the new neural connections, because you realize you're safe and you're moving forward and you're doing the things, right? That's when things really start to shift. But if you let it sabotage, if you let it paralyze you, you're reinforcing the old patterns. You're telling your brain, or you're telling the parts of your brain that are responsible for emotions and fear, that it's correct. Yeah. If you let it paralyze you, if you fail to take action, you're telling those parts of your brain that it's correct, reinforcing those neural pathways. The opposite of that is doing anything you can to break through. One small step, one step at a day, one step at a time, one action a day to move towards your goal. That's when you're going to start to break out of it. It's miraculous when you start to do that.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. I actually want to just take a little longer moment so people can let those words settle for a second. So let's just take a couple of deep breaths and let what you just shared.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Settle. That's really good. Yeah. I just feel great hearing it.
Yeah. So if there's, a goal that you're looking for, whether it's with your health or your success or your finances or your relationships, make a list of 3 to 5 things. And just check one thing off that list today. Just take one small step, and then watch how that momentum takes off.
And this is one of the secrets of lifestyle medicine, is that it's qualitative in many ways more than quantitative. So we look around and we see somebody we respect in our lives who's super ambitious and super successful, and we think, if I worked out as much as they ate, if I ate as many vegetables as they ate, if I meditated as many hours as they meditate, I'd get my breakthrough. And another piece of good news here is that the transformative aspect of taking action is qualitative. So 1/1000th of the dose of the meditation and vegetables and workouts that other person we admire did, because it breaks us out of freeze state. When we walk around the block for 5 minutes, when we do 1 minute of breathing, when we have one salad or one serving of chia pudding, we're qualitatively in the state of movement forward.
Right. And that brings us to the 4th A, which is acknowledge yourself. right? And that's when you give yourself a pat on the back for taking that step. Celebrate those little wins. Because again, you check a thing off that list and you acknowledge that you're moving forward, you're going to get a little dopamine hit. And that gets addictive in the best possible way. And then you want to take the next step in the next one. And then before you know it, you're really, dramatically rewiring your brain. And becoming that person that you're envisioning. You talked about it before. How can you fake it till you make it? Well, as long as you're moving forward, it's that you're not even faking it. Take those
Yeah,
steps.
that's
It's
what I
who
was
you are,
hoping
right?
folks would grasp, is
Yeah,
that the phrase sounds so crass, but the
yeah,
inherent truth is profound.
right. Exactly. So make sure
Yeah,
that you take a moment like we did, just to take those deep breaths and acknowledge the progress
yeah.
that you made and that you will continue to make, and then start over
Well,
again.
and let's have folks take that action item away in the most concrete possible fashion. So if you look at the authors of Atomic Habits and Tiny Habits, and you look at the brain scientists who are generating the data that's pushing behavioral focused folks like you and I in this direction of getting this news out, if you take someone who uh, uh, stops behaviorally and notes the win, so a high five in the mirror, a linger longer moment,
Yeah.
1 minute of feeling positive when something goes well, a full minute sounds like
Mm.
nothing. It's an
Yeah.
eternity.
Yes.
Most of us average like 0.7 seconds with our wins. And if we take a full minute, then the scientists looking at this stuff are saying, if you put somebody in a functional MRI scanner who's stopping and doing the high five in the mirror versus somebody that doesn't, you change your neuroanatomy faster in a more lasting and meaningful fashion by you're cementing the neural structures and you're sending a reminder signal to the brain. That's what we're after, that feeling. Keep doing that. And the brain goes, oh, I'm going to sprout a couple dendrites there. I'm going to go heal that nerve body, that neuron that's not doing that thing. I guess I'll just let him check out.
Yeah. I love it. And I love, I love, you bringing in the research here. It's because it makes it even that much more concrete. And it's, again, it's you create this momentum. You have that power. Everyone has the ability to do this.
I'd like to add one thing on A's 2 and 3. Anybody listening that thinks they don't have an issue with this, I'd like you to run an experiment. And it's based on the work of Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away a few years ago, but he was the most prominent Zen Buddhist of his generation. And in some ways, one of the most prominent Buddhist thinkers in the last 100 years. And this isn't me saying this, is people who know what they're talking about. And not as a religious comment, but again, as a psychological and a healing comment, because we've borrowed from the East, right? I mean, the meditation and mindfulness now that's used by Navy SEALs and business leaders and athletes has its origins to some degree in Eastern traditions, though that's not a fair summary either. Anyhow, Thich Nhat Hanh said, all experience that arises, you treat it, you name it, you treat it like a little baby in your arms. You say, hello, my precious, fill in the blank. I'm there for you. Right. And when I started doing this practice, I was profoundly uncomfortable. I was profoundly uncomfortable with, hello, my precious self-criticism. I'm there for you. And then, hello, my precious rejection of my self-criticism. I'm there for you. And hello, my precious sense of fatalistic, I'm never going to get better. I'm there for you. So I think you're muted, Joe.
Yeah,
Sorry.
there's a siren going off in the background.
Oh, pardon me.
Okay.
So on items 2 and 3, any of us who think I've never had capital T or little t trauma, I've never had my hard drive infected or hacked by any of this stuff, I'm completely comfortable with my existence. Everything that arises, if you treat it with the preciousness and immediacy and sacredness of a newborn in your arms, and you say, hello, my precious, fill in the blank, I'm there for you, 99 out of 100 of you are going to find there's some work to do. Oh, yeah. And it may be the most important work of your life.
It is. I'm convinced it's the most important work any of us need to be doing. And it's like, it's a perfect, talking about this newborn baby, it's almost literal, because I'm not good enough, or the self-criticism or the lack of self-worth is stemming from an event that happened earlier in your life. And so you really are holding that child self that experienced that, and creating space for them. And of course, you're welcome here too. You know what I mean? The emotion is really just the child. So of course the child is welcome here. Of course you're welcome here. It almost speaks to all of these 4 A's, like awareness and acceptance. Like, of course you're welcome here. There's no choice but to welcome it here, because it's here. So you have no choice but to accept it and welcome it and nurture it.
Yeah.
And say thank you for your amygdala is there to protect you, right? It's this ancient part of the brain. So thank you, amygdala, for protecting me. But there's no saber-toothed tigers here. I don't need you anymore. Right. Yeah. So I'm going to move.
I don't need you till the next saber-tooth tiger or the next,
right.
next
potential
exactly. car accident.
Right.
Which is about, probably for many of us fortunate enough to live in safe places, which isn't everyone. We should acknowledge too. Some of the people hearing this aren't in a safe situation, and compassion and prayer goes out to that person to have safety.
Yeah, exactly.
That they be physically safe, that they be mentally and emotionally safe and nurtured. And for those of us that have that blessing, then to go ahead and my favorite analogy there is just our amygdala is meant to be the security guard, not the CEO. So
exactly.
Don't create a promotion structure in the business of your brain that doesn't. The security guards are going to freak out because they're not trained to be the CEO. They just need to do their job.
Yeah. I'm not a therapist. This is not my profession, but people who are in a situation where they don't feel safe or they aren't safe, I think one of the first things that one of the first things that I sort of consider is, can you imagine your life differently? Can you at least imagine it? Can you allow your brain to imagine what your life looks like when you're out of that relationship, when you're out of that situation? Can you at least imagine and meditate on that? And I think what's going to happen for a lot of folks is when they can start really imagining what their life looks like, where they are safe, where they are happy, where they are content. Just maybe the universe starts to reveal some answers. But it takes some courage to even imagine it. But I think that's a step.
Well, and when you and I chatted 9 months ago, maybe a year ago, about this is where your energy is, this is where you're getting your juice, is this area.
Yeah.
There was that reluctance potentially about, do I know enough about this? Do I not have enough training to talk about this? And here I am, I'm licensed to diagnose things around this and prescribe medication. And I ask myself questions like, should I be in a psychiatrist like Achina Stein before I talk about it, right? But in my heart and my brain and my gut, I'm sitting here knowing that what you and I are describing is right on the edge of this wave of profoundly important change that's happening in response to this storm of upheaval and chaos. Some folks are being tumbled by this wave and smacked on the coral, or having to keep their sailboat in the, harbor. And others are taking this wind, this wave, and capturing that energy and transforming. They're doing what Heidi Hanna would say, that resilience is the reed that bounces back, the willow that sways in the wind. She's encouraging us to take this energy and become something more than we've ever been.
Right.
And so I think that we have the experience and the insight and the expertise to do something really important, which is get this good news out. And I think it's super accurate what we're talking about.
Right.
And you and I are invoking principles that are at mastery level from folks that we know and attend to, that know the science, know the behavior, know the sacred traditions. This is all there.
Yeah, absolutely. And acknowledging that, and it's for anyone, acknowledging we don't know everything. And so how do we connect the dots? Well, we're doing it. We're connecting our community and the worldwide community with some of the best experts out there and learning ourselves and taking our communities along for the ride. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Since we started on medication, Joe, can I
Yeah,
mention something about that so I don't forget?
please. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So as a family practice MD, IFM certified practitioner, and thinking about the conversation I got to have with the Gina Stein during the Healing Habits Summit, who's a functional medicine psychiatrist, MD. This is her
Mhm.
area of specialty. I should say that a couple of things about medication. I'm not adverse to my patients requiring
Mhm.
medication. And I would say, if they're suicidal or they're disabled, I want them on medication,
Right.
and that's the consensus. And Dr.
Mhm.
Stein does too.
Mhm.
And then using medication doesn't wed people to medication. And one unfortunate aspect of your misadventure 15 years ago is that some of the best experts in this domain, when people do wean, I often have people on these medications just for a year.
Yeah.
And then typically in the spring in Alaska is the best time to wean.
Hmm.
But a 6-month weans, even using compounded medications to
Right.
create step down doses, is
Right.
such a nicer thing for the brain
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
half dose for 2 weeks and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted people to know that. I suppose because we're talking about a heavy topic today that can include suicide and hopelessness and institutionalization.
Mm.
Joe and I it's the opposite. We're not talking about doing it on your own. We're talking about working in coordination with your conventional practitioner, your mental health practitioner.
Right.
Full transparency, like I'm doing this, I'm thinking about this. I was intrigued by what
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Rob and Joe had to say about, is there a path forward without medication?
Mm-hmm.
Bring all this stuff to the attention of your team. If it can't withstand scrutiny in the light of day, with full transparency with everybody who's a stakeholder, look at your stakeholders.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess a few sort of what I would think of as contextual comments.
I think it's a really important point. And, again, to drill down, you don't have to do this alone. You're not alone. So many people have gone through this. 15, 16 years ago, I did feel like I was alone because there wasn't as much information. And so I just took my doctor's advice, half the dose for a couple of weeks, and came off of it. Ended up having to go on. And, it's funny, you said 6 months. That's how long it took me to actually wean off safely, where I didn't have such horrible side effects. So I had to, cut the dose in such small amounts over time. It took, 5 or 6 months to actually come off of it. Again, I'm thinking about the interview I did with Dr. Tom O'Brien yesterday, and he talks about, medication and even supplementation as the life jacket. You need, like, you're in this pool, imagine you're in this pond and there's a waterfall crashing down, the water's turbulent. You need a life jacket. And so if you need the life jacket, that's fine. Use the life jacket as you're, looking upstream for the root causes, right? Looking upstream, taking control of these things, empowering yourselves with information and taking action, meditation, mindfulness, whatever, therapy, community, connection, people, all of these things, while you're I took my life jacket off too early. And that's what happened. I took my life jacket off, but I wasn't out of the turbulent water. I had to put the life jacket back on. And so, what I would recommend for folks is, don't feel like you failed because you're wearing a life jacket. We all need life jackets from time to time. But while you're wearing a life jacket, let's look upstream at what actions we can take to start to alleviate the root causes of these things.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I think one key item is to, in a minute, see what you have to share that we haven't gotten to yet. So there's something I'd like folks to reflect on big picture wise, kind of the 10,000 foot view, that if you're suffering, if somebody you care about is suffering, you can't help yourself and you can't help someone else until you first stop and just acknowledge the suffering. And one of the most insensitive things you can do is to go straight to the fix without acknowledging the suffering, because the person doesn't feel heard, and your spirit isn't held in a space which first just says, hey,
Yeah.
I know you're
I'm here with
suffering
you.
and I'm here with you.
Yeah.
Then the fix feels cheap, or it
Mhm.
feels non-attuned or insensitive or something
Mm.
off.
Yeah.
And then secondly, once the suffering's been acknowledged or acknowledged over and over again, and there's that solidity there around the acceptance and the awareness and the preciousness, then these things that we conceptualize as the ballast that's holding down our balloon, or the cage, or the prison, or being in a cave with a
That we
planet,
construct ourselves.
that's the fuel for our rocket.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
full acknowledgement here. I was sort of sharing my woes with a dear friend in Montana when I lived there.
Mm.
And again, he said, "Hey, I hear you, Rob," but he said, "I've got some good news for you. That stuff that seems like it's holding you down, the energy there, that is the fuel for your rocket." And so
Yeah.
when we talk about transformation or alchemy, transmutation, turning lead into gold, turning ballast into fuel, that's how beautiful this process is. When we take this energy captured there that we wish would go away and transmute it, that's what moves us forward.
Yeah, that's such it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like transmuting crude oil into fuel, right? Into clean burning energy. I love that. I flashed on as you were talking about holding space, and if folks who know people struggling with these things, sometimes the best way to help people is to just listen and just hold, like you said, hold space. I'm reminded of a dear friend of mine who passed away a couple of years ago, Dr. Frank, who taught me the difference between empathy and compassion. Empathy is, really being in the person's shoes and being down there with them and letting them know you're with them. But then rising up to compassion, which is sort of raising your own energy and your own vibration to show them the way out. So if you just have empathy and stay down there with them, then it's not as impactful as then rising above, like raising your energy and then really showing them, rather than just talking, rather than just, as men, I think we try to do this a lot. Right? We always want to solve everyone's problems right away, but instead stay there, linger for a minute and hold that space, and then just, let that empathy turn into compassion, and that you lift the vibration of the entire room, so to speak. I think that's a really important distinction that I'm always grateful for.
Yeah, it's so powerful, and it's such a great image. The light of compassion, the radiance of compassion, the energy of compassion, starting in that grounded, clear-eyed, I'm here with you. That to me feels like the whole package.
The lighthouse as opposed to the tugboat, right? Lighthouse on the shore, standing strong, shining the light, showing people the way, rather than the tugboat trying to go out into the storm to save people.
And a key distinction there is we're not telling people that we know what it's like to be them. We're not saying to them, you should fill in the blank. We're saying, this is what I see. This is my experience. This is what I know. And I think that it may apply to you. So if I were you, I suspect I might do this, but most importantly, this is what I've done.
Right.
This is the vibrance and radiance and safety I feel day to day, having dealt with similar challenges. And so my heart tells me, my mind tells me, this can be there for you.
Right. And if I could do it, you can do it. That's the attitude. Yeah. Love it.
Is there anything you came into today's interview wanting to share, Joe, that we didn't get to talk about?
I think we're good. I mean, I feel like we could talk about this for hours, but I think I feel pretty good about the conversation, and I hope people get some value out of it.
I think we closed it in a really powerful place.
Yeah. Great.
I feel really grateful getting to be on this journey with you and getting to learn.
Likewise.
With you.
Likewise. So appreciate you and the work that you do, and grateful to be working on this project, and excited to impact a lot of people with this.
Yeah, service. That's what it's about, huh?
Right. Exactly. Great.
Well, have a great day, Joe.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks for joining us for the Seaworthy podcast. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. If you think we've earned it, please consider giving this podcast a like, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. Thanks.